in the hills of Tennessee, where the mists still roll down like forgotten prayers. There once stood a school few remember, but none truly forget. It was called Eden Hollow, a boarding school for girls, founded by a religious sect whose name has long since been erased, shuttered in 1882 without warning. With 27 students, never seen again. There were no survivors, no graves, no answers, only whispers and the growing certainty that what happened inside Eden Hollow was never meant to be found. The school was built in 1859 on a hilltop in rural eastern Tennessee, surrounded by dense woods, a dry creek bed, and silence. It was founded by the Order of the Eclipsed, late splinter group that broke from mainstream Methodism after claiming visions of angelic convergence. They believed true holiness could only be achieved through isolation, obedience, and silence. They built Eden Hollow to refine the vessels of purity. Girls between 8 and 14, from families willing to give them up for higher service. Some were orphans, others were bought. In its prime, Eden Hollow held only 27 girls at a time, no more, no less. Always 27. The girls lived without mirrors, clocks, or colors. Rooms were painted white, floors were stripped bare, windows were nailed shut from the inside. No laughter was allowed, no singing, no writing unless dictated. Every morning began with the stillness hour, 1 full hour of absolute silence. Spent kneeling in cold water, they were told it purged the soul of earthly noise, that every drop of pain brought them closer to perfection. Punishments were not shouted, they were whispered. One former groundskeeper who fled in 1880 claimed he saw girls vanish for weeks at a time, then return, different, more obedient, more quiet. Some with missing teeth, others with a faint, unnatural tremor in their hands. In March of 1882, a shipment of supplies, bread, oats, linen, arrived at Eden Hollow. The delivery man knocked at no one answered. He circled the grounds. Windows closed, curtains drawn. The bell that rang every morning at 5 a.m. for prayer cry was silent. He returned the next day, still nothing. By the third day, local authorities were called. But when they forced the doors open, there was no one inside, no staff, no girls, no bodies. Plates still sat on tables. Candles had burned out in the middle of meals. One chair was overturned. Faint smell of sulfur hung in the hallway. The journals kept by head sister Miriam were missing, except for one torn page nailed to the chapel door. It read, "The sheriff filed a preliminary report, but within 48 hours, the entire investigation was halted. Files sealed. The property sold for $1 to an unnamed buyer. When the sheriff protested, he was removed from office for mental instability. He was found dead 2 months later in his barn, having carved 27 crosses into the walls. The families of the girls received no letters. No answers. In fact, many had already stopped hearing from the school years earlier. Some had assumed their daughters were dead. Others believed they were being prepared for divine service. None could afford to fight the church. And no one in town dared to speak against the order. Section 5. What was the order doing? Historians believe the Order of the Eclipsed Light was obsessed with ancient angelologists, specifically the idea that certain children could act as vessels for divine communication. Their writings refer to something called the ladder ritual, a final phase in which the purest voices are lifted beyond flesh, to be heard by the radiant ones. Some believe the girls were sacrificed in a mass ritual. Others believe they were drugged and taken smuggled across state lines into deeper experiments. And a few believe they really did ascend. On 1936, a crew digging foundations near the old Eden Hollow site unearthed a wooden staircase buried in solid stone. It led nowhere. It was made of aged oak, polished to a mirror sheen, and at the top step, carved in childlike letters, "We go up." The site was quietly reburied. In 1972, hikers in the area reported hearing girls singing from underground. They said it was faint, melodic, and in a language they didn't recognize. In 2004, satellite imagery showed unexplainable heat patterns beneath the hollow. No geothermal source exists. No pipes. No buildings. But every year, on March 12, the day they vanished, the soil registers a sudden 4-degree increase. Section 7. The final theory. There are no official records of Eden Hollow anymore. Even the land deeds have been wiped. The church that funded it has long since folded. Its final bishop dying in silence, blind and mute. But those who study the case, those obsessed with lost girls and buried truths, agree on one thing: whatever happened at Eden Hollow was not an accident. It was designed, precise, scripted, whether for death, for disappearance, or for something we cannot understand. The girls were prepared, and when the final prayer was spoken, they were gone. Sometimes, history doesn't just forget it. Buries. Sometimes, a place becomes a hollow because it was never meant to be full, and sometimes the silence left behind is the only evidence that something terrible once sang there. This was the story of Eden Hollow and the 27 girls who were never seen again.